Welcome back to the podcast. Rob Hunt here to talk some girls basketball tonight. Rob, you watched Alexandra kind of put on a performance tonight, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a kind of a limited schedule. There was just the one game, one wrestling meet tonight. So I was up at the jungle, and Alexander improves to 5-0. They're not into the meat of their schedule yet. That was one of the things we talked about tonight. But that defensive pressure, that intensity is something else. If you're not ready for it, you will not play well. I think they forced 29 first half turnovers, and they were off and running. Even though they really didn't shoot it well, but they still had a sizable lead and won pretty comfortably.
Well, do you've seen enough basketball, like I have through the years, and like Greg has, to understand that if your defense can create those kind of turnovers, you don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to shoot well. I know Travis Doherty always used to like to say that he would get upset when his team didn't play good defense, or if he thought that they lacked maybe effort or didn't work on it
Mhm.
hard enough, even if they won, because he said, your defense you can pack up and it can be good every night. Your offense comes and goes.
Right, and the defense can lead to easy baskets, layups, and transition scoring, and um, you know, uh, yeah, the defense travels. I think is a common phrase coaches like to use. And if you go into on the road in a tough environment, which Alexander's going to have to do, they've already done it. I mean, they have had a couple tough games here in this early stretch. Delta challenged them, Shenandoah challenged them early, but that defense eventually it wears you down. I mean, you're being pressed from corner to corner, end to end, and then boy, it gets late in that third and fourth quarter. I think what was Delta up three, or Alexander was up maybe 3 or 4 points at the end of the third quarter at Delta, and ended up winning by 20. And that's what that defense pressure can do for them. They just wear the other team down.
Yeah, I remember when the girls went to the semi-state in 2013 and 14 with Casey Jude and Leela Crawford, which is Gilman now, Tipton's coach now, Macy Lively in that group and everything. And Nick used to like to say it was 32 minutes of hell. He goes,
Mm-hmm.
when you play that 32 minutes of hell, that full court presser, yeah, you're going to give up some easy baskets, but the whole object is by the fourth quarter, that other team just does not, their legs are gone.
Yeah, they're gassed. They were absolutely gassed. And you can get on you get a couple quick turnovers and easy baskets off of that. The other team starts to question itself, and that stuff you've seen that too. That stuff can snowball. I mean, you give up a couple quick ones like that, and it gets going, and suddenly you look up, they're on a 10-0 run in the last minute and a half, and you've gone from a pretty close game to suddenly you're down double digits, and that's momentum's a tough thing to get back.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
How did do you have some stats from tonight? I assume Jacqueline had another big night after her 34-point triple double last night.
Jacqueline had a pretty good night and just missed a second straight triple double. As a matter of fact, let me pull out my stat sheet here. I should have had that
She was
ready.
one
Actually.
assist from a triple double in her first game. So
Yeah, I think maybe it's me. It seems like every time I go,
there you
Coach
go.
pulls her just short of a triple double. She, 24 points, 14 steals, uh, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. So a pretty solid stat line. She just,
Most
that's going to
definitely.
be the norm for her, right? She's just going to do that night in and night out.
And it seemed like maybe the game was a little chippy, you said?
Yeah, there was a moment, second quarter, and it was Alexandria was up pretty comfortably at the time, like it was 29-8. But things had kind of gotten sluggish. There was some sloppy play. Alexandria wasn't shooting very well, and there was a battle for a rebound. One of the Fort Wayne South girls had grabbed an offensive rebound, and Riley Kellums reaches in to grab it away from her. Looked like a tied ball, or I'm sorry, held ball situation, but she got it away. And the Alexandria bench called a timeout, and there was maybe some tense moments under the basket. A couple players staring at each other, had to be separated. Nobody shoved each other. It was nothing like that. But that seemed to kind of maybe light a little fire under Alexandria. They ended up going on a 14-point run, and it was just one of those moments where, and Coach Hosier talked about this after the game as well. they're the more experienced team. Fort Wayne South is a very young team, and in that moment, you saw Alexandria being composed. They stayed within themselves, whereas I think Fort Wayne South kind of got rattled a little bit there.
Playing these games are earlier pretty good because when you look down Alexandria's schedule, they're going to go through a stretch there where really they're going to play some teams that aren't really going to do much to benefit them.
Yeah, and that's this opening stretch of 5 games, historically not great teams. I think Delta's a little better. Shenandoah is definitely better um, than they had been the last couple of years. So not the toughest stretch of games Alexandria's going to face. Their next couple are going to be pretty good. I mean, they're going to go on the road to Yorktown, and then the LaPel comes to town in a couple weeks, so that'll be a big one. But at the same time, it's 5 games in 10 days. And I don't care who your competition is. That could be tough when
Oh
you
yeah, it
deal
definitely
with
can.
school and you're practicing the other days. And I think a couple of those. I think they had even a day game was in there Saturday, maybe on a Saturday. So I mean that's not easy to do. Um, so I think Coach talked about it, and Jacqueline talked about it. They're excited to get into some practices and kind of work on some things they saw in these first 5 games to put into use going forward.
Yeah, I think going forward, and when you look at them having to play APA and Westell and things like that, kind of before they roll into the
Whew.
Richmond tournament, it's a. I hope they don't lose anything in there because it's going to be a stretch where the, those games are probably going to all be blowouts, pretty much. Maybe not Blackford and Eastbrook, although
Yeah.
I think Blackford will be more before Eastbrook,
Yes.
only because Eastbrook has continuity with the coaching, with the coaching staff, meaning the
Yeah.
assistant moved
And the
up that's at the
CIC
head.
just isn't very good this year, except for a couple of teams.
Yes, Alexandria and Oak Hill.
Yeah, I know Eastbrook lost of course, a lot of their talent graduated. The team that had won, what was it, three sectionals in a row, something like that.
Blackford apparently has lost all of theirs because they
Yeah,
lost
kept running. That Eastbrook
77
kept
to
running into
8, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's been bad.
yeah, look, Eastbrook kept running into that LaBelle team in regional. Otherwise, they might have been the team going to state because that was a talented bunch.
That's right.
Um, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the CIC looks like. Oak Hill with an impressive win at LaBelle the other night. Alexandria certainly looks tough, and
And I think Eastbrook's good. They're just not as good as they have been.
right.
Yeah, of course, and Frankton's down. Alexandria, I'll tell you what, the thing is, that realignment, that's set up perfect for them to win that sectional because
Oh, sure.
LaPel and Sheridan
Yeah.
That's
are
going to
not
be
in
tough.
there.
That's going to be a tough game. That's LaPel Sheridan game. You got
Yeah.
Wills and Garner,
Yeah.
Yes.
Kenzie Garner. If you haven't seen Kenzie Garner play, that's a hell of a player to do. That'll be a heck of a matchup. It'll be interesting to see. Not to wander too far off topic here, but with LaPel going forward, it seems like what they're missing is that Maddie Pointer type player that they had the last couple of years. Danae Hazeman the year they went to the state finals. Somebody else that can score in addition to Will. She scored 27 points the other night against Oak Hill, but the rest of the team only scored 9.
Yeah, and
So,
that's the bad thing is like and I know too that you need a second and a third score, and then you can have different girls vie for that fourth and fifth, round up, but you really kind of want to have a steady 1, 2, 3 scoring.
By the way,
yeah,
Rob, there is no off topic here except for girls basketball. We're just here
I
to talk
gotcha.
girls basketball.
So it'll be interesting. When I was there the other night, Layla Dawson's a sophomore who was injured last year, still kind of working her way back. She had a nice game. She could be a kid who could do that. She's a point guard, but yeah, somebody else, Taylor Rose is a kid. We keep, she set like the program JV record for 3-point shots a couple years ago. She's a kid who's capable of putting up big numbers. So it'll be interesting to see as Coach Newby's really good at this, figuring out what his team needs to do to get better. So I've no doubt by the end of the year they'll be threatening in that postseason.
Yeah, and Jalen Delph. I don't think it's Delph. She was a Delph. I forget her married name. Is done a fantastic job at Sheridan, and I told her that last year. After the Tipton game and everything, I told her, I said, you have just done a wonderful job of taking a program that might be good here and there because you got a couple of things and really building a program and developing players. And Kinsey Gardner is really good. And, they played really well without her when she missed a couple games last year because of illness, and they didn't lose a beat.
Yeah, she played really well down at the. She was at the All Stars there in Anderson University. Played very well there, and yeah, she's a heck of a player. Uh, we were talking about finding that second story. That's kind of been the story with Alexandria the last couple of years too. Could they find somebody else that could score with Hosier consistently? And I still don't know that they have that one person that's going to score 12 every night or 13. Somebody else that's going to be a threat. Maybe not from one person, but maybe they're going to do it in the aggregate. I mean, Lily Harp's a kid who can go out and score 10. Riley Kellums can do that. Trinity Ford is a kid who hit a couple 3-point shots today. She can get hot. I think they've got some pieces there. I don't know that necessarily you're going to get one single player that's going to score that 12 to 15 points every night, but it might be a different player every night, that kind of thing.
They have high hopes for Conley Davidson to provide some of that too, right?
Conley Davidson's a kid who's going to be. She's still learning kind of the high school game, and she's got some size in the interior. The one thing that Fort Wayne Southside had going for it was they had a couple really big girls, big strong kids, and she got pushed around a little bit. You got to remember, she's still a freshman. So she's playing when she's playing against kids 2-3 years older than her. She's going to run into that. But make no mistake, she's going to be a good player. They're really excited about her. She's had some moments. She had a couple shots. She showed some talent on the rebounding. I think she could definitely be a very good supporting piece. And plus, that gives them two kids that can play in the post with Kellums as well.
Hey, how about those Elwood Panthers?
How about those Elwood Panthers 4-0? I'm looking forward to getting up there and seeing them. I haven't looked at the schedule coming up, but
they're not home again until like Thanksgiving week, I think. Next week they're on the road. I mean, and they got trips to like Cowan and Southwood.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about Southwood. Cowan might be winnable.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have beaten Cowan last year. I was at that game when it was at Elwood last year, and they should have won that game.
I think that's a team that's going to win 7 or 8 games and could challenge for 500.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And all this is going to do, the other thing it's going to do is just give those kids some confidence. And
that's right.
we talk about two kids that can score. I mean, you got a Breland Norris who can do it all, and Kendra Soleil who can dominate inside. I mean, that's a pretty good couple of kids to build around. And you find a ball handler and a couple other kids who can do some things. And Coach Licklider's got something going on up there.
Yeah, and again, and I love the fact that they've adjusted their schedule so they can win and have some
Yeah.
success. And I know Ryan. I mean, we're talking girls basketball right now, but I kind of know he did the same thing for his boys the last couple of years because he wanted them to experience some success. It's one of the reasons they dropped Tipton last year because during the regular season, Ryan said I didn't want to go early in the year, like in December, and get our butts kicked.
Well, and a lot of coaches say they want to beef up their schedule, so that makes them better. And I get the iron sharpens iron and all that. It's high school.
Yes.
And, these kids, you want the Elwood football team, which is, we've talked about their struggles. You want them to get a win or two each year. They're not going to win a bunch because they're in a tough conference. And not until they get that program completely rebooted. But you want them to schedule a game or two that you have a pretty good chance of winning. You want to do that with a basketball program that's rebuilding. And people criticize some coaches schedule. And I think when it depends on the situation. If you're in a situation like, a couple of those programs at Elwood are, or Liberty Christian bringing their girls basketball program back, schedule some games you can win. Get those kids to enjoy the sport. Because I think about those Elwood girls that went a couple of years ago. Those girls could easily have quit. That wouldn't have surprised me. I mean, you're getting your brains beaten in every night. Why keep coming back?
Right.
And you don't want kids to quit the game. You want them to keep playing.
No, especially because I've talked about this with Greg and other people before, because I will say this: the IHSA is not kind to girls' sports. You know, they start basketball practice the Monday following the Saturday of sectional week for
Mhm.
volleyball. If your soccer team won a sectional, it's right after they competed in the regional. And, and volleyball, especially volleyball, you're playing so many nights a week because you want to get in your matches. But then you go, and basketball is 4 months long. I mean, the season's really too long for
Mhm.
those kids. It's no wonder girls just end up choosing volleyball or basketball
Yep.
like that, because that's a long time for them to go. They don't make the boys go that long. I mean,
Right.
right in a row. Man, yeah, football, but football is really the only sport that they have to wait on. And I'm a
And
big
even there, the
Half
only
the
time you're really waiting on players is if your football team happens to make a pretty good run in the
right,
section. Because I mean,
exactly.
yes,
Yeah,
boys practices just started. So if your team doesn't win sectional, all your kids are at basketball practice on time
that's right.
yes.
or wrestling,
And you
whichever
can
the
still
case.
give them, and even if not, you can still give them a couple days off
Yeah.
sometimes too, because just of the way with the game start. And a lot of girls, they want to get programs, they want to get those games in early so they can have the weekend games while boys aren't playing. And
Hmm.
I just wish they would take a better look at it, especially because I know I was told earlier uh, by somebody that said, studies have proven that girls are more susceptible to knee injuries and stuff
Hmm.
without rest because of the hormone estrogen. And so, so what do? We just make them just go really without a break until after basketball season.
Yeah, I was actually sat next to Kinley Webb, who came up and sat next to me up there in the bleachers while I was covering the game today. The really talented shortstop for Alexander, and she's getting ready to have surgery on her ACL. Uh,
Yeah, I
they
hated to hear
they
that.
she seems to think that she's on course to and still be able to play this year, which of course I'm over here. The dad instincts kick in. I'm like, look, don't rush yourself back. You are too talented. Do not risk further, making it worse. Come back too early, but that's one of those things. I mean, she's a softball only kid. She's getting recruited by big time programs. I mean, big time programs, and deservedly
Mhm.
so. She's really good. So she's a one sport kid. So she's playing softball year round, and that kind of speaks to your point there. I mean, the girls can run into those problems just simply because of biology.
Yes, biology, and then and girls tend to, I think girls tend to specialize more than some boys do too, and I think a lot
I
of
think
that
you're
is
right.
because it's so competitive for scholarships. I'm not so sure. A lot of men's programs and different things, they want to see that you're an athlete and see how you do, and
Mhm.
there's even the smaller schools sometimes can have more money or find ways to come up for you. And I just hate it. I wish they would take a look back, and there needs to be some kind of something worked out to where there actually can be a break between girls, and between those fall sports, a better break than between the fall and winter sports. Because I mean, look, if you're a girl and you ran in the cross country state finals,
Mhm.
you're hurt by it. I mean, there's the only sport that you can play in the fall and not really be hurt coming to basketball, worried about not having enough rest, is girls golf.
Yeah,
It's true.
that's true. That's very true.
Hey, Rob, you've seen Pendleton
And,
High
and the
20.
opposite, of course, to that is the girls wrestling, which that do you realize we're already basically a month away from the postseason? I mean, they just started. It's such a short season.
I know, and that is terrible too. Um, I'll tell you what, wrestling meets, they don't really last super long anymore, because it's real
Nope.
rare, even some bigger schools, to find teams that field wrestlers in all the weight classes.
Right. I mean, a good example of that was the girls meet we covered tonight, Kyle was over at Pendleton Heights. Pendleton Heights and Warren Central, a couple pretty good sized schools, right?
Right.
5 total matches.
Yeah. So
I
why
mean,
not?
the rest were forfeits. Yeah.
Yeah. So give a little bit of a break between that, and why not do? There's no reason you can't have girls and boys, right? Because a lot of times coaches may be coaching both, and have them on the
Mhm.
same night.
Have them together makes so much
Have them
sense.
together. You
We're
know.
actually going to have that this coming week. Anderson's hosting. I think their boys season opener. The girls are wrestling same
Awesome.
two schools, so
Yeah.
we'll see that with it.
And to me, it makes it easier to. It's actually more fair to do a girls and boys wrestling doubleheader than girls and boys basketball doubleheaders because they're playing
100%.
JV games at the same time.
100%. 100%. Let me talk about deadline on those two situations. I mean, we just can't. I mean, the CIC is doubling it up, and I get it. It makes sense for travel expenses and all that stuff. We cannot cover those. And with our deadline, we just can't cover them.
Right.
And it sucks because there's usually some pretty good games, in that conference. But what can we do?
Yeah. And speaking of coverage with wrestling, if you put them together, they get more coverage. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of excitement about girls wrestling right now. I mean,
Yeah.
Greg, you were there the other day. I mean, you go to one of these meets, these kids are having a ball. I mean, these girls are having the time of their lives. There's so much excitement, so much joy. I mean, joy, that's the word.
Oh,
I
you're
mean,
right.
that was the thing I took away from that. I mean, girls were walking up the mat after getting pinned in 20 seconds and smiling and laughing and having a great time. And I'm just like,
Well,
what is going on? And they are so thrilled to have this sport. They're some of these girls have been waiting several years to get to do this. So
Tipton's.
good on the ICSA for finally doing this. By the way, my new favorite athlete of all time, I think Naomi McCracken, the girl Franklin wrestler, she was wrestling in the 235 class. And I interviewed her. We talked about it. She's never done like high school sports.
By the way,
But she
great
came out
piece.
for wrestling.
It was a
What's
good
that?
story. It was a
But-
very good story.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she had never done wrestling. She had played some softball and some volleyball, but never like high school sports. Goes out there, wins by fall, and stands up with this incredibly surprised look on her face. But and then she won her second match. So technically, she was the champion. So I go over and we do this interview. We talk about it. She's just a great kid to talk to. If you get a chance, if you covered Franklin wrestling, find a way to talk to her. She's amazing.
All right, I will.
She also happens to be the mascot for the Frank. She'll be wearing the eagle at the basketball games this year. So anyway, and I'm over there talking to the coach, just kind of talking about her a little bit, and she comes running over to make sure I know that she was wrestling up a class.
Aw.
And I was like, okay, cool, good to know. And I'm like, and I kind of looked at her coach, and I'm like, and he said she's not wrestling up a class, but she weighs 199.
Wow.
She wanted me to make sure. Yeah, she didn't want people to think she weighed 235. And I think that I think you're right. I think it's funny, but also it speaks to kind of what you were just saying about that self-conscious. These girls are at that age where weight,
Yeah.
body shape, all that, the body image, all that stuff is a real deal. And but
Yeah, no doubt.
she's a delight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those singlets, those singlets don't really do anything for your body, and especially if you're female.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Rob, let's get back to basketball real fast. You saw the Pendleton Heights Arabians. Tell me about them.
The other night, that was another one where they overmatched Newcastle. It was pretty obvious, but again, it took them a little while to get going. They turned up the defensive pressure in the second half, and I think they held Newcastle to like 5 points in the second half. 24-2, I think was the scoring in the third quarter. They came out, put on pressure, scored in transition. Casey Warble did Casey Warble things. Olivia Jones had a nice game. That you talk about a kid developing into that second or third option for them. Olivia Jones can definitely do that. Not to be confused with Olivia Jones at Alexandria, who's also a really nice player. This is Olivia Jones at Pendleton Heights. And they've already got Ada Hupfer, who's going to be a big time recruit. She's already getting offers as a sophomore. She didn't have a huge game, but she's a presence. I think she had like 9 or 10 rebounds. So Yeah, Pendletonites. We'll see. I think they were disappointed with the way they played at Westfield on Saturday. Felt like they could have won that game. That's a game that usually causes them problems, but I think they lost by 7 or 8, something like that. It was fair. It wasn't a blowout by any means. So uh, we'll see what Pendletonites could do. I think they've got they've got that Madison County Championship on their mind. They want to win the conference, so they definitely want to win a sectional.
And I'd like to tell you that I enjoyed the season previews today, but there were so many, and so it was so good that I only got through a couple of them. But I look forward to reading through all of those pretty soon. You guys did a lot of great work there.
I tell you what, I got to give a shout out to our correspondents. Those guys read the names on those stories of who wrote what. That
right.
came together in a really short amount of time. We were actually really late getting started on that. I think they hammered out those stories in like 8 days.
Wow.
They kind of I could put the word out to them. They volunteered for how many stories they could do. I only had to write one. I mean, those guys
Wow.
really killed it. I mean, I was very impressed with them. George did a great job of editing. We pulled some photos together to make a pretty good looking presentation, and then our page designers put together a great section. It was a real team effort, but I really got to give a shout out to those correspondents.